everybody, and welcome to this special spoiler review for episode 7 of Andor here from the
Geek
Buddies.
Oh, hey.
Hey! It's early.
Oh, got a smoker's cough down there. McClung with the smoker's cough.
Buddies. Oh, my boys. Follow them size 5s.
Shannon's been up for a while now, fretting over the loss of another prime minister in Britain, so I understand why his voice is a little gravelly. But yeah, we're going to get into this. His old Scottish roots coming back out. We're going to get into this whole episode here, episode 7, the announcement. A lot happened, even though there was not one blaster fired, I don't think, and one action sequence at all. There was a lot that went on here in the aftermath of the Aldhani escapade, mission, robbery, announcement, event, whatever you want to call it.
It was just a robbery, John.
It was just a robbery?
It was just a robbery.
I don't know. Deedra thinks it was an announcement. All right, so we're going to get into all of it here, and let's introduce ourselves first. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, writer, producer, and host here on the Geek Buddies and the Outlaw Nation.
I am Michael Vogel. I'm Vocal Michael Vogel. And I am a writer and producer of animated TV shows and movies.
And this is Shannon McClung. I'm an animation writer and a television actor. And, in the morning, my voice sounds kind of hoarse-like, but Vogel can't put together his own last name. So that's what it's like when he wakes up.
There's the counter.
Wow.
Okay, we're starting off.
No shots fired in Andor, but shots already fired on Geek Buddies, I see. So
few blaster shots for sure.
And a little pew 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 from McClung.
Pew pew pew.
That's an old blaster. And big thanks, of course, to carbonhealth.com, who continues to power and sponsor us here on the Geek Buddies. Go to carbonhealth.com, get checked out today. Tell them the Geek Buddies sent you. More than anything else, tag them in social media posts when you show up. Take a video of yourself there at Carbon Health, tag us, and we will retweet it for sure on our official account or on my account, whatever. Just retweet us or just tweet at us and let us know you were there. carbonhealth.com. Go check it out today. They got virtual care, in-person care, anything you might need. And also you can download the app and have a dock in your pocket for any of those healthcare questions, concerns, or needs on the go. All right, let's jump in this episode 7. Let's make it quick. Overall thoughts here, Mike, before we get into the storylines of this episode.
I loved this episode. I know that there was no blasters. I know that there was no giant action set piece. I know, but this is it's a really interesting episode. Like they've said, we thought they were going to do like a 3-episode arc, a 3-episode arc, a 3-episode arc, a 3-episode arc, and they've come out and said that 2 3-episode arcs, 7 kind of stands alone, another 3-episode arc, and then the 2-part kind of finale. And I think this episode really is a turning point. Like seeing the aftermath of what happened on Aldhani, on Coruscant, at the ISB, on Ferrix, on that Scarif beach party planet, just seeing how everybody responded to this, to me, is like tried and true Star Wars. This was, it's for all that this has been a different kind of Star Wars and they're showing us a different part of the Star Wars universe. The Rebels doing this and everybody responding the way they're responding is, to me, like classic Star Wars, and I loved it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I saw that from a few people in some of their writings that this feels like Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, you don't get to this point without those 6 episodes, so show some respect on those 6 episodes. Not you specifically, but some other people who've been bashing.
I was like, dude, I liked him. Don't attack me. Yeah. It's early. I already getting attacked by McClung down there. I'm good.
No. I know you've liked them, brother. We've been on here. Shannon McClung, your thoughts overall on this episode 7, the announcement?
Yeah, despite a lack of blaster fire, a lack of action, I thought this was a fantastic episode. I love Star Wars politics when it's done like this. I think we think back to episode 1, and that was sort of like, that was a critique of the films, that the politics weren't that interesting, whereas this is fascinating. And maybe it is because, one, you have Tony Gilroy and his staff's writing, which the writing was just crisp, so many great one-liners in this. But then you also have the sort of the fallout of something like the Aldhani robbery. Everything was just, for me, firing on all cylinders, because we spent some time with these characters. We know where everyone is coming from. We're just invested in their stories. And I love the ISB. Like, that is, it is just, it's like Aaron Sorkin in space. I mean, I really enjoy it.
I mean, they did have a couple of hallway conversations as they were walking, so that's a fair point there.
The old walk and talk.
Yeah, I loved this episode as well. I loved every episode of Andor. Really, I haven't been disappointed by one. Nothing has felt like filler. Everything has been connected. The stakes have been slow. It's like a boiling pot of water. You're just waiting. It's slowly simmering, and it's gonna blow up in those last 2 episodes. And I can't wait to see it. So this is fantastic. I've just been enjoying it. The political intrigue, the writing here, the interpersonal relationships, the development of these story arcs for these characters, how we're seeing now our allegiances challenged a little bit by some of the actions here in this episode as well, and the confusing part of liking these Empire characters, even though we don't want to root for the Empire.
Deedra, man.
Yeah, Deedra, really a fascinating thing to experience for sure. And shout out to Denise Gough, who's doing a great job with Deedra Meero. All right,
I do want to say just really quickly before we jump in. The other thing I just want to say as an overall is that what's really interesting is most of this show is built around Cassian Andor thinking he can't make a difference.
Right.
Like he doesn't make it. Like there's no way to. Like he wants to live out his life, just doing what he can do, getting what he can get, because there's no possible way you can go up against the Empire. So having an episode where literally the entire galaxy is responding to something that Cassian Andor did, and he's still going, no, it's just a robbery. Like, this is dumb. Like, you guys are all being crazy. Like, the fact that he did this thing that had such massive repercussions, and watching him slowly wrap his head around that, I think is going to be part of what's really, really fun. I know Laura's not here to talk about it, but this is where when you take a main character and make him the reluctant hero who has to be dragged along for the first part of a series, and you're kind of like, I really want him to, be jumping in and ready to join the rebellion, but this is the satisfying part.
Right.
Like seeing someone who didn't want to do it, but falls into this thing, then does something and goes, oh shit, this really did something. Like that's good. It's going to be so awesome in the back half of the series.
Absolutely. Well, let's jump into that Cassian storyline. We start out with him going to see Marva, sneaking back into Ferrix or onto Ferrix, and going back to see Marva. And, she's happy to see him, but she's also like scared for him and not sure what's going on. He says, hey, I've got enough money. Let's go. Let's get off this planet. Me, you, and B2 Emo. We can go wherever we want to go now. It's like a proud son coming back to his mom when he's been poor and saying, look, I found some money. We can get away from this place. We can finally find a better life. Let's go. And she's hesitant. You're wondering why she's hesitant. What's this all about? Because certainly it seems like she's been able to move him around from place to place, and it's not something new for them. Then she says she's kind of tired. He says, okay, I realize that. Lets her go to sleep. Goes to see Bix. And this is a fantastic conversation where Bix is still suffering what happened to Tim, still suffering what happened to her, what happened on the planet, tells him that a lot of people who are left on the planet and in the city blame him for what happened because he killed those 2 corpos and brought the heat down on them. Yes, if Syril doesn't go after him, this doesn't happen. But if he doesn't kill those corpos, this doesn't happen. So an interesting smashing of points of views on a situation and a back and forth. Clearly, you can tell there's a lot of affection between them. But in the end, she tells him he's got to go. He leaves the money there to pay off his debts, takes off there, and then goes back to see Marva, and Marva doesn't want to go. Marva's not ready to go. And ironically, it's because of the Aldhani situation that he was involved in. She feels the call to fight finally once and for all. And she says, before I get too old, I want to make a stand. And I think this is the beginning of the rebellion. This is the beginning of people fighting back. This is the moment that gets us all motivated to go after the Empire. And it's a heartbreaking scene between them talking about love, talking about how he's not going to find peace without her. I got teared up. I teared up for sure watching this scene. And then he goes and we cut to him being on this Ibiza planet, which is really interesting in my opinion. Niamos is the name of the planet. He is with a woman there. He's using his Keef identity there. He's pulling some credits out. He's going to take off and buy Pezos and Revnog, which I imagine is some kind of candy and some kind of drink. On his way to the store, we see these shore troopers attacking or chasing after these guys who are running away from them. And Andor just happens to be walking towards the store, looking around. One of the shore troopers stops him, questions him. A KZ unit grabs him by the neck and puts him up on
KX unit.
Sorry, KX unit picks him up and puts him up on K2. Well,
no, it's a KX series security droid. K2SO is a KX security droid.
Right.
It's early.
Yeah, fair enough. But he puts him up there, starts to choke him, and then we cut to him going in front of the court, and he's charged with all these things that he didn't do. Now, he did do the Aldhani thing, but he didn't do the things he's being charged with, and he's sent to prison for 6 years, and that's because the new empire had passed these laws after the Aldhani situation, or the empire passed these new laws after the Aldhani situation. So in a way, he did get punished for all of this, and we're going to see what happens. Mike, a lot they put Andor through, and he wasn't even really the main character of this episode, but there was a lot here they put him through emotionally, and then being sent to prison for 6 years. And of course, the ramifications of what that means in our real world lives, seeing someone falsely convicted simply because they happen to be around an area and look like someone they were going after.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is all for poor Cassian. This episode is all cause and effect. Like coming back to Ferrix and having to face the Empire has made this place their home and has come in hard.
Right.
And it's really because of what you did. Like this is on you, and this sucks. And he's not wrong when he's like, well, look, if Tim hadn't done this, if this hadn't happened, but the inciting incident in the first 5 minutes of this series is sort of what kicks all of this off.
Yeah. And
you have to own up to that. And that sucks. And we get those flashbacks. We kind of finally see what happened to Clem.
Oh yes. Oh my God.
And
yes.
Which is kind of just heartbreaking again in its complete. Clem wasn't really standing up to the Empire. He was trying to avoid people getting in trouble with the Empire, and then got caught in the crosshairs, which is exactly what happens to Cass. Well, not exactly. Cassian's just wrong place, wrong time, but a similar thing where the Empire doesn't care if you're guilty or not. If you even look suspicious, you're going down, and that's what happened to Clem, and that's what happens to him. Him and Marva. First of all, B2 Emo is the sweetest little puppy dog of a droid in all of Star Wars. Yeah. He has no attitude. All he is an adoring little droid who just loves Cassian, and that's all he does, and he breaks my heart every time. He's like, hey, Cassian's home. I'm so happy. I'm like, oh, buddy, it's not ending good for anybody in this. Marva's really interesting. I mean, her speech when she finally does reveal to him where she's at, and she's like, have you heard about this Aldhani thing? Like people are standing up, and he's like, it was just a robbery. People died. Like, this is not a big deal. And this is the crux of what makes Star Wars work, that like rebellions are built on hope. It's what Jen Erso said, that like, there's no hope in this galaxy. There's no hope. The Empire has come into Ferrix. They're marching. Everyone has given up. And this tiny little spark of Aldhani, like them sticking it to the Empire in this way, shows that the Empire can like be attacked. And Marva's like, I don't care if you're laughing. I don't care if I know I'm old. I know it probably won't make a difference, and I don't care. Yeah. I'm going to do this anyway. I'm going to stand up. And it's, to your point, John, it's such a heartbreaking scene because Cassian just wants to take care of her and go away and hide out, and she's not willing to hide out anymore. She's ready to stand up. Like, it is so amazing to me.
He even calls her Ma, and I don't know if that's short for Marva or Mom. It's a great like double meaning on that. Yeah. And
so, and just that whole, I know that you can't stay here, but I can't go. Like, we love each other, but we are on different paths now. Heartbreaking. And also what this does, I mean, Cassian has no options. Coming back out of this thing, like you can't go home again. Home, the Empire has made it their home. You can't go with the girl that you kind of liked because she's like, you got to get out of here, and I'm done. And then even Marva's like, I'm gonna go fight in this rebellion, and you got to go. Like, he has no options, which is why he goes to, Ibiza. Yeah. And then, to your point, like just doing literally nothing, and those stormtroopers come in, and it would be too on the nose if it wasn't 100% realistic to what actually happens to people every single day in 2022. So the parallels are very clear and obvious, but they are also apt and correct. And then getting punished. It is funny because you're like, hey man, that's not fair. He didn't do any of that stuff. He didn't disturb the peace. He didn't do any of this. I mean, yes, he did rob Aldhani and like $80 million. So sure, maybe you indirectly caught the right guy. But so it's, they're doing this really interesting thing where they are just squeezing him into a corner where he has literally zero options. So it's going to be interesting to see at what point he finally realizes that A, going with the rebellion might be his only option, and B, when does he become a true believer? Because like those are the two pieces.
Right.
Like there's one, I'm gonna do this because I kind of have to. I can't go anywhere else. I can't do anything else. And then the other piece of this is, when do I read Nemec's book? When do I see that I actually did make a difference? And then also just as a fun, Easter egg, like that KX unit came up, those security droids came up, and I was like, oh, it's K2SO. And I was like, this one's not K2SO. Not yet. We're not there yet. But I got there. Seeing Cassian Andor with a KX security droid got me very, very excited for whenever that does happen. Yeah. And also made me very sad because I do think that K2SO's death is maybe the most sad death for me in Rogue One. And I get very upset about it every time I think of it.
That's a fair point. That's absolutely a fair point. Yeah, and you can't ignore the comparisons here. I mean, Clem being a black man trying to stop these people from attacking essentially the police force turning around, seeing him standing in the street, and the look on his face when he looks back at Cassian, and Cassian's look at him too. There's just such, we can't do anything. We're both helpless in this situation. And then we see him hanging from the square, or his feet there as he's hung from the square. That is, I mean, if you're looking at historical allusions to that here in this country, hanging black men to intimidate a populace, to not go against the police force that is in control of certain areas, that's in our history, ladies and gentlemen. So, and the idea of, again, Andor being falsely accused of these things and going because he happened to look like the people. It's just very deft how they're doing it. It works on the surface, but if you're looking for the analysis, it's all there for you to enjoy. Shannon, what do you think about what they did here with Cassian and what they put him through emotionally, and then eventually, of course, physically throwing his butt in jail for 6 years?
I mean, you really hit the nail on the head, John, when he was just like, this is a proud son coming back. Like, guess what, Mom? I scored. I did it. I'm going to be able to take care of us. I'm going to get us out of here. It was just so heartbreaking. I love the fact that Marva doesn't seem to have a bed, or if she has a bed, she doesn't use it. She sits in that chair with her cane and her blaster. And if somebody comes up to the door, she's up, leveling that blaster at whoever's trying to come through the door. Totally agree about B2 Emo. I imagine it's from the wear and tear of this droid has been used for so long and has probably been banged around a little bit. But the fact that the droid has developed a stutter, which makes the character all that more endearing. Like B2 Emo, as I was watching it this episode, B2 Emo, I'm like, you really remind me of Billy Bibbit from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I mean, that is what I get from B2 Emo. Love the exchange between Cassian and Bix. The whole thing is just like, Bix is just kind of like, look, this is on you. This is happening because of what you did. And he's just like, wait a minute, your psycho boyfriend tried to get me killed, and this is on me. And it's like, that wouldn't have happened had you not killed those two corpos. Like you, and you can tell, even though Bix is saying get out of here, like she still does. Did she ever loved him? Probably not. She cares about, she loves Cassian, but due to the circumstances of their world, like they can't be together. And now it's permanently in the rear view mirror. Cassian going to, it was funny how you guys are calling it Ibiza. When they get to Niamos, I'm like, oh, this is the opening of Miami Vice in Star Wars, when you see those alien birds flying. What was really funny, because he's out, he's like, all right, this is all I got. I've got, however many credits. I'm gonna go and have a good time right now. As he's walking by, by the beach. I mean, everything that worked about this is some of this, I hope I don't get dinged here. For the things that didn't work in Last Jedi with the casino plan. I'm like, everything that's working about this resort planet 100%. is what did not work about the casino planet. It's like, this just, I don't know what it is, if it's that they shot on location or what, but everyone here feels real to me. One part I thought was really, really funny is when the shore trooper stops him and he's just like, you're sweating. He's like, it's hot. in a couple of those scenes, I'm like, it ain't hot. They're on the coast. They're getting those cold coastal winds in the UK right now. There is no, like, there was one poor alien who in the background appeared to be shirtless. And I'm like, if that is an actual dude, like, that dude is cold because you can see the cloth on his trunks kind of blowing. I'm like, that was probably a very, very tough day for those background performers.
Yeah, I mean, the difference, I mean, there's like, to me, there's a very clear and obvious difference between Canto Bight and what is it? Nemos?
Niamos.
Niamos. Because I did notice that, I mean, I don't know if anybody, we haven't talked about this, but like Andor's been a little bit light on aliens.
Yes.
Like it's been very grounded, very serious, and Ferrex, like there's been a few. I mean, there's a few aliens running around on Ferrex, but it's not overwhelming. And in this episode, both in the dinner party that Mon Mothma was at and in on the planet, they kind of went more, okay, let's give them some of the Star Wars creatures. But on Canto Bight, there's sort of this extended sequence where it's just the only way to refer to it is like alien silliness.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, look at this guy doing the dice, and this lady being like, oh, like there's a lot of like silliness, and these aliens were just chilling. There's a casualness to them that was just very relaxed, that made them feel more real because you weren't shining a spotlight. And I do feel, and as we all know, I love Last Jedi, but I do feel like in Canto Bight, Rian Johnson's kind of maybe shines a spotlight on the aliens in a way that is like, okay, man, calm down a little bit. We don't need all that. You could have just had them there.
My favorite was the alien was like,
the first shot, having the drink with the umbrella.
There are three. I had to go back and look at it. I didn't get a good look. There are three old lady aliens sitting on a park bench. And like, they have like little hats on, and like, I don't know, guys. Like, I'm like, I think they're female, but I'm like, those are just three old ladies just straight chilling, being like, well, the Empire's a piece of shit, but at least we got to feed these pigeons. Like, I was like, all right.
That's the alien Golden Girls. That's what they are. All right. We'll be right back to jump into the Mon Mothma stuff that Michael just touched on right after this. That's good, man. That's a good music cue.
Hey,
all right, let's get into the Mon Mothma here. This also wraps in Luthen Rael and his situation. Huh?
Just Luthen in general.
Right. Yes. Okay. So we got the Luthen listening on his ham radio about the Aldhani situation, that 80 million credits were taken. Soldiers have been fired. Over 100 residents have been arrested. Mon Mothma comes to visit him, and clearly she did not know that he was putting this in motion, and he did this behind her back. In essence, she is completely frustrated and angry about the situation. He quizzes her about a meeting. He is so flippant about this meeting and her anger about it. He says, this network is up. Either stay on the right or get the hell off. I don't want to hear about it. And she's saying, Palpatine's not going to hesitate. This is bad. And he goes, I want it to be bad. I want people to suffer. I turned on Luthen in that moment. The second you're flippant about collateral damage from your high perch, fuck you. So I was really mad about this whole situation, that he seemed unbothered by the cost of war. It's real cool to say cost of war when you're sitting back watching other people die for your cause. He tells her if she can't deal with this, then she needs to surrender and walk away. And he says, we can't hide forever. And that's a part of this whole situation for sure. And then we see then we see Mon Mothma is at a dinner at her place, and she meets up with Tay Kolma. Ben Miles, for those of you who watch Coupling, the British version, he's playing a senator from Chandrila. Yeah, he says he can't imagine living there on Coruscant. Then we see her husband and her daughter watching this back and forth with Tay Kolma. Her daughter comes in saying, I need to ask your permission to leave. And she's like, yeah, you can go. That's fine. And then her and Tay, Mon Mothma and Tay, have this conversation about she wants to take him into his confidence. And this is who we suspect that she wanted to bring into this network that Luthen mentions in the earlier scene, this family friend to access your money. This is what she's pitching him. I want you. He initially resists, says, my politics have gotten harder since we've hung out. So I don't know if you want to bring me into your confidence. She's like, well, here. And then lays out this groundwork in this fantastic scene talking about this Mon Mothma that you know and that the galaxy knows. That's not the real Mon Mothma. That is all a front that I've been putting on because I've learned from Palpatine to trick people to worry about what's in one hand when in fact the more devastating thing is in your other hand, and that's how I'm playing this whole thing. So I'm going to make you chairman of this charity, and you're going to come to Coruscant a few times, and we're going to put this thing in motion. And then we see Clea, who is of course Luthen's assistant on this, going to meet Vel. Vel is there. They have this conversation, and Clea kind of taking cues from Luthen, telling Vel that she needs to wrap up a loose end, and that's Cassian Andor. I am now turned on both of these people. Screw them. Let them get shot in blaster fire. I'm so frustrated by this. And Vel is not happy about this. She asks about Cinta. Clea shuts her down. Clea flippantly says, yeah, we'll do tributes to the people who died. It's no big deal. This is the rebellion. This is what happens. And that's it. And Vel is left with the ramifications that she's going to have to go kill Cassian Andor. So really interesting stuff going on and how they've turned this around, the political intrigue of this Shannon. I really liked a lot of what we got here, but especially that scene with Mon Mothma and Takoma.
Yeah, with Mon Mothma just getting to Luthen's at the beginning, like, you know, he's listening to the news. As soon as that door shuts, when Mon Mothma arrives, like, he's like, all right, let's smile. Like, they're doing all these gestures, but they're having this conversation. So great. I mean, just really, really great. And you get the sense that Mon Mothma is on Team Rebellion, but she wasn't ready to do this yet.
Did you sense Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, similar? Like Alistair wanted to do one way, Otto wanted to do the other. It seemed like a really interesting comparison this week. Yeah, like again, I think Mon Mothma like you do not understand what you have set in motion. Like the law that eventually put Cassian Andor in prison for 6 months is a result of this. And she's like, you did not think this all the way through. And he's like, yeah, but we can't wait anymore. Like, the network is built. We got to go. Yeah. As Mon Mothma is flying away and Luthen is in his sort of, you know, bougie costume, essentially. Yeah. Like, he's got the wig, he's got the collar. Yeah. You see his face drop. Mm-hmm. Where he's still in that, like, it truly looks like a costume at that point. Really, really awesome. The whole scene between Clea and Vel, like, for a second, I think you were the one that said it, John, that I wonder if Vel is somehow related to Luthen. Like, is this his daughter? And I really got that sense. Like, the moment that I saw her dressed up, where she... the appearances, she looks good, but you also can tell, like, this is not what she would prefer to be doing. Like, she would prefer to have her combat boots on and be out in the trenches. I really did think that. I'm like, yep, that's his daughter. And I think that's the conflict they're going to have, is she's still very much about the people, whereas Luthen is looking at them, as you said, as collateral damage. Like, the whole thing about suffering, like, he's like, yeah, that's the point. Because I think going to make people stand up. I think I underscore your point here, Shannon. She keeps asking why he didn't come with her. Yep. So, yeah, that's a kind of great point you're making there for sure.
And then the whole dinner scene. I mean, Mon Mothma, you see what a skilled politician she actually is. Yeah. Like, the whole idea that, you know, as long as I'm in irritation, they're not going to pay attention to this. Genevieve O'Reilly did such a great job delivering sort of these very harsh revelations, but doing it with a smile, like keeping up appearances. So like that whole scene was great. And like this idea that you have these two lifelong friends who are trying to kind of feel each other out in a very public setting, because honestly, this is the safest place they could do it.
Ironically,
because they can't have that conversation. I mean, even Clea said, like, receiving messages and sending messages, that's really risky. So the best place to do this is in public where everybody can see. Just so fantastic.
Yeah. And also, I got the feeling, and we'll go to you, Mike, next on this. I got the feeling that she's not in a loveless marriage. She's chosen to be in this marriage. Whereas we were feeling sympathy for her a couple of episodes ago. It seems like this is all part of the veneer now, that she wants to convey this idea so that no one thinks differently about her. What do you think about how this whole thing went down when Mon Mothma in this?
I don't know about that. I feel like maybe at some point she married Para and was like, maybe this guy's great. And then as she has become more fed up with the Empire, and her husband is like, Coruscant's a party. Like, she's like, oh my God, fuck this guy so bad.
Well, it was an arranged marriage, so I'm just saying that it could have been maybe on purpose. Yeah.
I feel a little, I haven't turned on Luthen and Clea because I think, because like they're not, like, what's great about this show is like this rebellions are messy business. Like, they're not wrong about any of this. Like, you can't just, there's no way to rebel against a galactic empire and not have repercussions. You like, it would be lovely if you could and say, hey, let's go kick him in the shins a little bit, but do it in a way where nobody gets hurt, and then we'll win. Like, he's not wrong. Like, you can't do that. And I think what's great about this show is it's actually showing the ramifications of the Empire. Like,
yes,
fighting the Empire is not a few X-Wings blow up and that's really sad and we feel bad for them and one Ewok dies, but other than that, isn't this fun? Like, the rebellion is messy business. And so, you know, I think like both, it's going to be interesting to see where Luthen goes with this, because I do think the biggest thing that Luthen did wrong is not anything that he says about this is the reality of the rebellion, is that he did it completely on his own. They've built this network, and as he says, the network's been built. What did you think we were going to use it for? And that great line where he's like, nobody's ever built a weapon and didn't use it. Yeah. So he's not wrong about that, but Mon Mothma is going down a road where she's building a rebel alliance. And when we get to Rogue One, we see what that alliance is. It's a bunch of people arguing about what the fuck to do. And they're not going to do it unless you're Admiral Raditz and you're a badass and you go off to fight no matter what because he's my hero in Rogue One. But so like you're going down this road of them building an alliance, and Mon Mothma is amazing because she's the one that holds it all together.
Yeah,
Luthen isn't wrong, and clearly the Aldhani escapade, the Aldhani tragedy, the Aldhani robbery, whatever you want to call it, had the intended effect. Like, it woke everybody up. We've like, Marva's over here being like ready to fight the rebels. The Empire is like, oh, this is way worse than we thought it was. Like, he's gotten the reaction. And he's not wrong. Clea as well. Look, Cassian's my boy. Do I want them to kill Cassian? No, I don't. But Luthen went and picked up this mercenary who he thought might be a good guy to join the rebellion. The dude did the thing and then made off with the money and said, don't come find me. And he knows what Luthen looks like. And he knows that there's this giant interconnected rebellion. That's a loose end. Like, he's a loose end who we are on his side and he's the main hero of our show. But she's also not incorrect in what she's doing. So I think it's like watching how they are acting, and they're being really careful because this is scary business. Like, going up against the Empire is impossible. So they're being careful, and that I agree with. They are kind of going rogue in making their own decisions on what to do with this network, while Mon Mothma is putting herself out here. And that's where I think they're messing up. As far as Mon Mothma and that whole scene, you guys nailed it. Like, it was those two having that conversation at that party while like she just keeps reminding him to smile was thrilling. Like, I've never seen two people talk about politics and starting a charity where I was on the edge of my seat. But like, here we are. Here we are. I am nervous. Like, even though he said, you know, and I think it's like, it's going to be really telling over the next few episodes what happens, because he kind of says to her right off the bat, he's like, hey, if it's political, let's not talk about this because you're here on Coruscant and these are your people. And just given what the Emperor's been, what Palpatine's been doing, like, I'm a little bit more extreme than you might remember. And then she like flips that on him real quick and is basically like, yeah, this is all a front and I'm basically want to take the Empire down. Like, she hasn't fully said it yet, but setting up this money for what it's going to do, like, the more that he finds out about what's really going on is going to be a real test of how far his politics really have swayed. Yeah. Is he going to go on board with this whole, like, okay, like, I love what you're doing? Or as much as he thinks he's against the Empire, does he reach a point where he turns on her and I mean, he obviously doesn't turn her in, because we know when she, if you watch Star Wars Rebels, you know when she gets on Palpatine's shit list. But does he almost turn on her? Like, is this a bad idea? Like, it's going to be really interesting. And again, just letting anybody into this secret, this show does such a good job of making you really feel how absolutely dangerous it is. Yeah. So I thought it was all great.
It's really interesting. Like, I know we're pressed for time, but I think it's really interesting that you took, like, Tay might betray Mon Mothma. Like, he might get to a point. I actually see it as the reverse, that he's going to be find out, and her only course of action is to turn on him.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Shit, I hadn't thought
that is where my head went.
Ooh,
that's even worse, and that would be me. Yeah, but I mean, I think that's what's like the visceral feeling of the impossibility of going up against the Empire. and these few people that are starting to do it again, because by the time we get to Star Wars A New Hope, the rebellion is this like organized thing that has been fighting the Empire, and like there's good guys and bad guys, and they both have ships and they both have plans and they both have whatever. This is skulking around in the shadows with everybody trying to find out what you're doing, and just barely by the skin of your teeth being able to have these conversations. It is crazy.
And I wonder if, and I know this meeting was already set up, but I wonder if now Mon Mothma does this meeting and uses it to usurp the authority that Luthen thinks he might have in this situation. Now that Luthen has taken these measures, this is her way of maybe countering him down the road, which I think would be really interesting to see how that relationship kind of plays out too.
And you could be right, John, in that I know we're pressed for time. We want to get through those stuff, but you could be right in that, like, as much as this is a story about Cassian Andor becoming a true believer, which we know, like, by the time we get to Rogue One, like, he's like, I'll kill for the rebellion. Like, he's definitely he's rebel scum in there. So watching him go from this doesn't matter, I just want to be on my own, to who he becomes is great. But this is also, how does Mon Mothma become the lead? Like, she is the face of the Rebel Alliance. Like, she, when we get past Return of the Jedi, she's the face of the New Republic. Like, she is the one. And it's because she has this balance. Like, Luthen, maybe he is a little too aggressive. Maybe he is a little bit too much SAW Gerrera. Maybe he is a little bit too much, look, I'm going to go and do this because nobody else will, and I'm just going to do it without asking anybody because I want to. Right. And that might be a great way to kick things off. Like, he definitely stirred up a hornet's nest, but that's not necessarily the way to bring others to your side where they feel safe enough to say, I'm going to fight next to you. So I think, like, watching what her journey is with all this is going to be really, really interesting.
Both are necessary, but one has to take the lead, and that will be the consequences or ramifications of that decision. Is what's going to reverberate. Also, her name is Mon Mothma. What's a moth? It's before it becomes a butterfly, right? So she's going to be coming out at some point. All right, let's take a break real quick, and we'll be right back right after this. No, it's a little bit late. I can't give you.
It was a little bit late. I was taking in your incredible metaphor.
Gracias. Let's slam these two storylines together because I know we're pressed for time. It's unfortunately, we all work, so we're pressed for time here. But yeah, let's talk the Deedra Meero, Syril Karn storyline. Start with Deedra. This whole situation with, because I think they're going to be connected as we go along. Deedra is, she's sitting in this room with the Commander Yularen, telling everybody who's in charge of the sectors.
Clyburn.
No. Clyburn is
that's Partagaz.
That's shit. You're right.
Yeah. Yularen is there, and he is telling everybody who's in charge of their sectors what's going to be required. I think he's this guy's above Partagaz, and he's telling them all the new changes, the new laws. Essentially, the Patriot Act turned to 1,000 or turned to 1,000,000 is what they're going to be doing here. There's going to be different charges. They're going to tax the people even harder for anyone who is taking part in this partisan activity. The military, they will have access to all aspects of the military now going forward. There's going to be something called the PORD, the Public Order Resentencing Directive, which is what ends up costing Cassian Andor 6 years of his life if he stays in prison that long. Then we see Deedra saying that this is the wrong. We cut to her with her assistant there talking to him and telling him that she thinks this is the wrong way to go about it, that they're playing into the rebels' hands. They're essentially turning themselves into the villains, and they're the victims, they're the martyrs, and that's not the best way we need to be going about this. And then later we see her coming in and talking to this guy Felzonis to ask him, because she wants a record of all the missing avionics, comms, navigation, and targeting equipment going back 2 years from all the Star systems, wants him to keep it confidential. And then later at another meeting with the ISB, where Partagaz is hearing from what's going on and dressing down some of the guys in charge of these sectors, Blevin steps forward and says that Deedra has gone behind everybody's back and gotten this information that she asked for. So clearly that young guy who said he wasn't going to turn on her turned on her and told Blevin and everybody about this situation. Blevin thinks he's got the upper hand here, but Partagaz turns the tables and sides with Deedra and says, I wish a lot of you all took the same initiative that Deedra does, and then removes Morlana 1 from under Blevin and gives it to Deedra and asks her to walk with her as they leave the meeting. And he says to her, watch your back. With Syril, we start out with him and his mom, clearly dressing him down.
Mom.
Telling him about his clothes, is needing attention. We see him getting interviewed in this essentially Metropolis version, or the Empire's version of Metropolis. Everyone's in a nameless, faceless cubicle doing their thing. He's put in charge of fuel counting or some shit. And at the end, we see, as everything is happening to Andor, the camera cuts to him, and he's sitting in this cubicle, and it slowly pans out, and he looks up at the camera, showing you, yeah, he's a guy who does want attention. He does want to stand out. He doesn't want to be part of the crowd. And I imagine Syril will find his way under Deedra's employ as this series goes along with the next few episodes. So, Mike, back to you. These two storylines, talk about them. What do you think?
Well, Syril just really, I mean, you know, there wasn't a ton with Syril. We're just kind of seeing where he's going, but holy shit, his mom. I've never seen someone make such a big fucking deal out of a collar in my life. Like, she is the worst. He looked perfectly fine, and he was so funny. She was like, do you know what's wrong with that suit? And he was like, I am sure that you are going to tell me. Like, I cannot with you, old lady. I hate you so much. Like, it is just, she is so delightfully awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, just really curious to see. I agree with you. I think he's sort of gonna it's all gonna wrap around back to Deedra, and I'm really curious to see where his story goes.
He's getting closer.
Because he sort of has been, and clearly they keep coming back to him enough that you know they have a plan. But just with Deedra and the ISB and everything else, like, it really does feel like he's been sidelined a bit. But that's part of his story. I mean, I think he feels like he's been sidelined as well. So seeing how that all is going to kind of shake out is interesting. To your point, and what we've been talking about, and they're doing such a good job, I know Deedra's the bad guy, but I'll be goddamned if I wasn't cheering when she got the one-up on Blevin. Like, I loved that scene so much because Blevin just thought he had her. He was like, I just need to bring this up because she is doing this and it's really bad. And he was like, and you told her this. And she was like, that is actually not what he said. He said this. And he's like, do you have proof? She's like, I now do have proof. And this is what's going on. And this is what the rebels are doing. And this is what's happening. And I wouldn't have been able to find that out if I hadn't done this. And then, like, it was just the greatest turn when Blevin still thought, he's like, well, what if everybody acted like her? And Clyburn was like, well, that would be a lot better, wouldn't it? That would be nice. I wish you all had that kind of work ethic, because this is what we want. I was like, this is just, I am thrilled and I am on Team Deedra until Cassian shoots her in the face. Like, I am like, I love everything about her. Like, I'm like, this is great. So, and it's gonna be really interesting to see, and we've seen it in the trailer. Just like, I think it's one of the only things that's been in the trailers that we haven't seen yet is that Deedra does end up on Ferrix.
Yeah, she does.
And we see her there. And when she gets to Ferrix and starts sniffing out what's going on, and this is where, John, I think Clea's point is well made. Both for Syril and for Deedra, she's going to Ferrix. Cassian is the link to Luthen, to the rebellion, to Aldhani, to everything that happened. And so, like, he is a loose end. Yeah. Like if they got rid of him, if Vel did go just kill Cassian, Deedra would ultimately reach a dead end. We know they're not going to do that, but like, Deedra's way smarter than everybody else, and she is going to be all over this and just track those breadcrumbs right to Cassian. And I kind of feel like that's where a lot of this is headed this season. Is ultimately, we know Cassian doesn't die and he sides with the rebellion, but watching how close things get is going to be really interesting. Yeah,
I agree. And that's the real, you haven't turned me around on Luthen, but you've given me things to chew on for sure. I still think he's an asshole who used a person to, just like a good producer, said all bullshit to them to get them to do the job, and then afterwards toss them aside. I've seen that happen way too many times. But yeah, that kind of thing you're seeing here in this situation as well. He needed Cassian to do the job. They got the job done. Now let's get rid of him. And you're right. If once she gets down there, she's going to start rousting people. She's definitely going to have to Marva. And that may be how Syril gets back into this. And Syril was the guy. And remember, the guy, when he's being interviewed, goes through all the events that happened in Morlana 1. So clearly there's a record of Cyril's participation in all of this. And I wonder if that's how Deedra reaches out and pulls him out of that cubicle and gets him on her team to be a part of what's going down in Ferrix to root this whole thing out.
I think that's she seems thorough enough that she's like, if I'm going to go deal with this, I think she would absolutely be the type of person that would go find Syril and be like, why don't you run me through what happened here?
Yeah.
Like, I've read the report, but you tell me what happened. And then maybe she like pulls him out and she's like, you're coming with, like, well, it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I don't think it was an accident that they had that run through. Shannon, what do you think about these two storylines, how they played out in this episode?
So I just think the juxtaposition between Cassian's mom and Syril's mom is just so interesting. How Syril's mom is just go along with everybody else. Just go along with, like, why did you raise your collar? That says I want attention. Whereas Marva is so loving, saying, I know you can't stay here, but this is what I like. It's just so interesting how the juxtaposition of their two characters that extends out to their mothers. There was one thing, because I love the scene between Syril and his mom. There was one thing, this is the first, for me, ding on the series.
Ooh.
When he's watching the news report.
Yes, right.
And how it looked like something we would see in our world. I'm like, oh, this should have been some sort of holotech. Like, why does it look like the man on the street? Like, that was the one thing I did not like. Like, that did take me out of it for a second. I know
You'll
that's
see
a little
behind me,
thing.
Aldhani and the garrison.
I mean, that's what it was.
You know, it's funny.
It was.
I don't think I even consciously thought that, but now that you're saying it, when I did see it, you're right. I did. I think I subconsciously had a similar reaction as you're saying it now. That's interesting.
I
We're
mean,
here
that
with a
was
couple of Aldhani residents. What did you think about the? That would have been the next thing.
And thinking about the Aldhani residents, think about all those shepherds that went to go see the eye. How they're all in imperial custody now. Like, we just wanted to watch the lights. We just wanted to have our party, and like now we're suddenly arrested. The whole thing with Syril and the guy interviewing him in the the cubicle field, and how he's going through the jobs. It reminded me of Office Space, when he's just like, it might not be as exciting as fuel counting or whatever you said. I mean, I did not make the notes to find out what the departments were.
Fuel counting, yeah.
But then you see Syril looking at this empty seat and being like, well, here's my future. And then getting to the end where he did kind of look up, like, I was like, oh, that's I hadn't thought of it the way that you put it, John, but that was really interesting. Like, him looking up. Yeah. Yes, he does want to be noticed.
Let me throw one more thing. Shannon, you make a great point, maybe accidentally. Him looking at that chair is like,
because you don't make good points on purpose.
Well, no, he does, but sometimes because him looking at that chair is his prison, like Cassian was sent to prison. So there's this kind of thing in the same episode. They both are essentially sent to their versions of a prison. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it all started when I talked about the juxtaposition of the mother. So I'll take I'll take the W here.
You should take the W. Absolutely. That's your point. Yeah.
Going back to the ISB, watching that Colonel character, like the bristling mustache that he has, like everything visually with the scene, I'm like, I just think works out so perfectly. Deedra just walking down a hallway is intimidating. Like, she has this sourpuss look on her face that I feel like I think she's walking she's walking a tightrope in terms of like one turn of the dial to the right, and this could veer into mustache twirly villain. But she's playing this just right in the center. She's doing just enough to where she is so compelling as a character. But she is also our bad guy. Like the whole thing that she has with the attendant going to the big scene with Partagaz. This had some of the best just lines of dialogue going through when he's Partagaz is asking the one guy, like, no, is this right? And he says, you're correct. He's like, I'm correct. Oh, your approval is heartening. The way he dresses people down. And then when it gets to Blevins and Deedra, when he's like, hey, we need to talk about this, and he's like, Supervisor Meero, do you mind having your conduct ventilated in public?
It's great writing, man.
That is such a great way to talk about that line. And then when she kind of comes back with her theory, and there's sort of a quiet in the room, and Partagaz, it looks like, thesis, please. I mean, that's something that's a phrase I want to insert into my normal everyday dialogue. Instead of being like, oh, tell me more, I just want to go, thesis, please. And something else that I really love about the ISB, and this happened with the Mon Mothma scene as well, is the references to Palpatine. Like,
Yes.
this show is very separated from the Star Wars that we have been given before, because tonally it's just very, very different. Talking about Palpatine like this, I mean, I think is really cool. Like, knowing that he is sort of a cutthroat.
Yeah.
The whole the line, I show you the stone in my hand, you miss the knife at your throat.
Right.
All of those lines of dialogue are so great, and because as an audience we know who Palpatine is, we know what he is. Hearing him spoken about from the ISB, not with affection, but like, hey, I talked to Emperor Palpatine. This is what he thinks here. And then you hear it from Mon Mothma's side. It's like, Palpatine is going to come down hard. I mean, it's just so well done. And I cannot wait to see Deedra go back to Ferrix, because she's not just going to pull Syril. She's going to pull the three of them.
Yeah, probably
the guy
Boss
that was
as well.
The boss, and also, he's a part of this.
Yeah.
He's coming back too, and I'm assuming he's going to be like an attendant at a fuel station, because there's, he probably was fired as well.
There's a fermenting. Yeah. All of that, absolutely, and shout out to Denise Gough, who's also making those pantaloons work. That is not easy, ladies and gentlemen.
Those are some pantaloons.
John and John can speak from experience, because we worked an event together one time where he had to play a 1930s movie director with this giant, pre-electronics megaphone, and he had to wear those pants.
Oh,
John, you made him work just as well as Denise Gough does.
Please. As if I didn't feel big enough, having my legs stretch out for a few inches on each side.
Didn't they give you a cigar too?
Yeah, a cigar as well. It was great. A lot of fun that night for sure. Worth the money. It was a good night. Hanging out with you and Kalinowski for sure. All right, final thoughts here, because I know we got to wrap up. Michael, final thoughts on where we're going next, or what you think is going to happen over these next 3 episodes.
It's real, I mean, it's kind of what we've been saying, but what this episode really just nailed, the reason it feels like Star Wars is because we're seeing how the rebellion is effective.
Yeah.
We are seeing how this network that they put together, even though Luthen and Mon Mothma currently don't necessarily see eye to eye on how it all went down, that this network that was put together, that Deedra is now tracking, actually does have the capability to cause damage. And seeing both people like Marva respond to that and say, oh, this could actually work, but also seeing the Empire crack down so hard because this could actually work.
Yeah.
And we obviously know it works, but we know that this is a multi-year thing. So seeing this, it's like we said last week that Aldhani really had this feeling like this was like the first salvo in the rebellion. So seeing that reaction and now watching everybody sort of just spiral into what we know as the rebellion and the Rebel Alliance and the Empire is really, really thrilling, and kind of putting Cassian Andor in the center of all this. It's really, Cassian Andor is a great character in Rogue One, but all the characters in Rogue One are great characters who you're like, this was a fun movie, but you're not necessarily a huge part of Star Wars because you were in one movie and then you die at the end. But putting Cassian Andor here at the very beginning of this, and having him be one of the people that was on that first mission that really made a major difference in the rebellion, and then watching him go all the way to being there when they found the Death Star plans, like, really solidifies him as such a major and important part of Star Wars. So it's great. I'm loving it.
Yeah, 100% agree. Shannon, final thoughts on this, and where you think we might be going here?
We know Deedra's going to Ferrix, and she's probably going to Ferrix next episode.
Yeah.
And I'll be curious, like, when they talked about that the series was going to take place over 5 years. The moment that Cassian got sentenced to prison, I'm like, well, wouldn't that be a bitch? If our lead disappears.
Oh my God.
Until he literally gets out of prison.
The uproar would be insane.
I mean, but no, I'm really, really loving the show. It has been a minute since I've bought an action figure, but I'm like, if there is a Meero action figure, a Deedra Meero action figure, it would probably be her, B2 Emo and Cassie. And I'm looking at the space on my desk right now, trying to figure out if there's room for them.
There's
for
my
the Cassian.
Your pantaloons as well. You got pantaloons. There's my Cassian Funko, which is available out now. They've been out for a while, and they sent me one to kind of promote it. So you guys should absolutely pick it up. I'd love a Deedra Meero Funko with the pantaloons. That would be awesome as well.
I want the Black Series. I want her. I want her scowling at me with judgment every time I have a script due that I'm behind on.
There's some good scowls in this show for sure. Her and Syril when he gets upset.
Y'all-
and of course,
Y'all can keep those. I want the Black Series Luthen in his B. Arthur dress. That's what I want.
He's doing this.
He's permanently posed like this.
I'll take my Mon Mothma. I'll take my Mon Mothma. Yeah, I agree with both of you. This is a fantastic series so far. This episode was so good, written by Stephen Schiff, who has written a lot of episodes of The Americans. So it makes sense that he knew how to do these interpersonal things and people having multiple sides to them and gray areas and all of this. So you're getting some great, of course, Tony Gilroy supervising the whole thing. You're getting some great writers coming in and delivering some really next level Star Wars here. And it's so fun to appreciate this and see it from this point of view for sure. And I'm sure the next 3 episodes are going to be even more fun to explore and have some fun and discover some new things about Star Wars as well. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching this spoiler review episode of Andor episode 7 here on the Geek Buddies. We appreciate it madly. Shannon, what do we have to tell them?
Yeah, like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at @geek_buddies. On Instagram, at @the_geek_buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, at Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you would like to follow Mr. Vogel, it's at NKToon. If you would like to follow Mr. Rocha, it is at The Rocha Says.
Mikey?
Well, the rebellion is heating up and the Empire doesn't like it, and there is a lot to talk about. So if you want to help track the beginnings of the Rebel Alliance here with us, here are some things that you can do. Smash that like button below, subscribe to Johnny's Outlaw Nation page, check out all the amazing content that he's got, leave your comments below. What do you think about Andor so far? Where do you think things are going to go? What do you want to have happen? And how do you feel about pantaloons? Let us know below. If you are listening to us on a podcast, take a minute to leave some stars, leave some comments. It helps us go up in the rankings so more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you can do is retweet this video, post it to your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
Boom, absolutely. Thank you all so much. And big shout out to carbonhealth.com, who continues to power and sponsor us here on the Geek Buddies. Head on over to carbonhealth.com for any of your healthcare questions, concerns, or needs. Download the app to have a doc in your pocket as well. 100+ locations all over the country, 80+ locations in California alone. Go and see them today. All right, take care of yourselves. Be well. We'll talk to you next time with another brand new episode here from the
Geek
Buddy!